dinner, my mother stood up, smiled, and announced she was giving away my wedding gift, the cottage my in-laws had given me, to my sister. What she didn't know. I had receipts. The restaurant glowed with warm chandelier light, the kind that made everything look softer than it really was. Glasses clinked, forks scraped gently against plates, and low laughter floated from table to table. Evan sat beside me, his hand resting over mine, grounding me as relatives and friends toasted our future. On the surface, it was perfect. Linen napkins, polished silverware, love in the air. But something felt off. My mother, Evelyn, kept scanning the room instead of enjoying it. My sister Chloe leaned back in her chair, smiling too easily. A tightness settled in my chest, the kind I'd learned not to question. Then Evelyn stood up. She tapped her glass, the sharp sound cutting through the chatter. Her smile spread wide, practiced, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I just want to say," she began, voice syrupy, "how proud I am of this family." She paused, letting the room lean in. "And since generosity is what we stand for, we've decided to pass the cottage Evan's parents gave Lucy over to Chloe. She needs it more." The words landed like a blade. For a split second no one moved. A fork hovered midair. A laugh died halfway out of someone's mouth. The silence was loud, heavy, suffocating. I felt dozens of eyes flick toward me, then away, as if embarrassment were contagious. "My wedding gift," announced, reassigned, erased. Chloe laughed first. Short, careless sound. "Relax," she said, waving her hand like she was brushing away dust. "It's just a cottage. Just a cottage." As if it weren't a home. As if it weren't something given with love, meant for our future. She smiled at me, indulgent, like I should be grateful for her taking the burden off my hands. Evan's body stiffened beside me. I felt it before I saw it, the way his jaw clenched, the way his grip tightened protectively. He looked at my mother, then at Chloe, with an expression I'd never seen before. Anger. Clear. Unapologetic. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out the room. My ears rang. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was public. Deliberate. A performance designed to put me back in my place. People say families fall apart in private. They're wrong. Sometimes they do it under chandeliers, between courses, with witnesses. I realized then that I had spent my whole life being the manageable daughter, the one who didn't make waves, who adjusted, who gave. Something fundamental cracked open inside me. This wasn't sudden. It was 30 years in the making. 30 years of being overlooked because I'd always survive it. The unspoken rule had always been the same. Lucy gives. Lucy bends. Lucy never takes. But to understand how we got here, you need to know what my family had been doing to me for 30 years. Because this wasn't just about a cottage. This was about a lifetime of being invisible. If you've ever been the responsible one in your family, the one who's expected to sacrifice without question, you'll understand exactly what I'm about to tell you. In our house, there was an unspoken rule book. No one ever handed it to me, but I learned it by heart anyway. Chloe shines. Lucy manages. On the outside, we looked perfect. Holiday photos with matching outfits, coordinated smiles, my mother Evelyn glowing with smooth confidence as she laughed with friends. People admired our family. What they didn't see was the constant current running underneath, the silent calculations I made every day. When to speak, when to stay quiet, when to step in and smooth things over. I learned early that taking up less space made life easier. So I did. Again and again. I was 8 when Chloe decided she wanted the bigger bedroom. "My friends will come over more," she said, already picturing it as hers. Evelyn agreed instantly. Thomas nodded like it was obvious. I helped Chloe move into the freshly painted room, carrying boxes while she bounced ahead of me. I took the smaller one, the one with the humming vent and the view of the fence. "You're strong," my mother said. "So responsible. So mature." It took me years to understand those weren't compliments. They were instructions. And weapons. We grew up, but the roles didn't. Chloe drifted from job to job, relationship to relationship, always certain someone would catch her. Usually that someone was me. I loaned money that never came back. I covered bills she forgot about. I sat on the phone for hours listening to her cry about choices she refused to change. I rearranged my life to absorb the fallout. And when I needed support, Chloe was suddenly busy, unreachable. The exhaustion crept in slowly, the bone-deep fatigue of always being the safety net. Still, I told myself this was normal. This was love. This was family. That's what families do, right? I'd say, even as I swallowed my own needs to keep the peace. Being strong never meant being valued. It meant I wouldn't fight back. The dynamic didn't soften with adulthood. It sharpened. Shock after shock, I absorbed everything quietly, because that was the version of me my mother preferred. The one who held everything together without asking for help. I didn't just support my family. I carried an entire world alone, and convinced myself that was my purpose. Drop a blue heart in the comments if you've ever been the family member everyone takes from but nobody gives to. You're not alone. Everything changed when I met Evan. For the first time in my life, someone saw me. Really saw me. The cottage wasn't just a house. It was the first foundation I'd ever been handed instead of forced to build alone. And maybe that's why my mother couldn't stand it. Evan was different from the very beginning. He didn't just ask polite questions and wait for his turn to talk. He asked about my job, my projects, my ideas. He leaned in when I answered like my words mattered. Like I mattered. He never expected me to carry everything by myself. If I was tired, he noticed. If something felt heavy, he didn't dismiss it or tell me to be stronger. He saw the real me, not the manageable version I'd perfected over the years. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone had my back. Partner, not another person to manage. When Evan's parents, the Hales, gave us the cottage as a wedding present, I didn't know how to breathe for a moment. It was a small white house on a quiet street in Seattle, with a little porch and windows that caught the afternoon light just right. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid. It represented something I'd never had before. Independence. A beginning that didn't require me to sacrifice myself to earn it. It was the first thing that was truly mine. Not because I endured enough or gave enough or proved myself useful. It was given freely, with love. Not just a place to live, but a symbol of a new life I was finally allowed to step into. In the weeks leading up to the rehearsal dinner, my mother grew curious. Too curious. She asked questions that didn't feel casual. Would the cottage stay in the family? Could Chloe use it during a transitional phase? What if she needed somewhere to land? Each question curled unease deeper into my stomach. I told myself she was just being a mother. Just interested. But I knew better. Evelyn never touched anything without a plan. And she never asked questions unless she already wanted the answer to serve her. When my mother saw something she wanted, especially if it belonged to me, she reached for it with a smile so warm you missed the cold behind it. I saw the signs. I ignored them. I chose hope over suspicion. Have you ever ignored red flags because you desperately wanted to believe the best in your family? Comment red flags if you have. This story is about to get so much worse. Nothing prepared me for what happened at that dinner table. The moment I walked into the ballroom, I knew something was wrong. From the moment I entered that rehearsal dinner, I felt it. The air was wrong, the smiles were wrong, everything was choreographed. I just didn't know I was the only one without a script. The second I walked into the ballroom, the floor felt tilted, like I'd stepped onto a stage mid-performance. The chandeliers glowed too brightly, their light harsh instead of warm. Silverware clinked with an edge that made me flinch. Evelyn turned toward me and smiled, but it was stretched thin, the kind of smile you practice in a mirror until it looks convincing. Every face felt angled toward something I couldn't see yet. Conversations paused half a beat too long. It was clear something was already in motion. I just didn't know what, or why my name felt heavy in my chest. Chloe was already at the center table, laughing too loudly, drawing people in like gravity. She was telling a story about how chaotic life is lately, her voice trembling just enough to invite sympathy. Heads nodded. Hands reached out. When I sat down, her eyes flicked over to me. Not warm, not surprised. "Sessing. Rough day?" she asked, voice dipped in sugar. "I'm good," I said, forcing a smile. Her lips curved into something knowing. "Well," she said lightly, "you will be." The words lodged in my chest, vague and unsettling. I laughed weakly, telling myself I was overthinking. But my stomach disagreed. As the meal went on, Evelyn became theatrical in her affection toward Chloe. A hand squeezed her shoulder. A kiss pressed to her hair. Loud enough for nearby tables to hear, she said, "Everything's going to work out beautifully." She complimented Evan's parents on their generosity, lingering on the phrase, "to the whole family." Chloe mentioned needing a stable place at least 3 times, each one framed as an offhand comment. Each time someone nodded sympathetically. Each time more guests overheard. My stomach coiled tighter with every word. The Hales exchanged puzzled looks, whispering to each other. Thomas barely looked at me, his eyes flicking toward Evelyn like he was waiting for cues. Evan stayed close, his hand brushing mine under the table, grounding me when I felt like I might disappear. Dessert arrived, and the air thickened the way it does before a storm breaks. Evelyn stood, smoothing her dress, tapping her glass. That practiced smile returned. Before she spoke, I saw it. Chloe leaned back in her chair, smirking. Not kind, not nervous, not grateful. The look of someone who already knew the ending, and knew she'd won. Everything clicked at once. The questions about the cottage. My mother's sudden interest. The carefully planted comments. The sympathetic murmurs all night. This wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't careless. It wasn't love gone wrong. It was rehearsed, choreographed, planned. They had a script, and I hadn't been given one. Still, nothing prepared me for the sound of Chloe's laugh when my mother finally spoke. Not soft, not surprised, triumphant. And then my mother said the words that would crack everything open. The applause after the announcement faded, but the ringing in my ears didn't. And that's when everything changed, because I did something they never expected. I left the room, and I found the evidence. They thought I walked away to cry, process, to accept. They had no idea I was about to find the smoking gun, and it was going to destroy them. I excused myself before the walls could fully close in. The hallway outside the ballroom was dimmer, cooler, blessedly quiet. My hands shook as I pressed my palms against the wall, trying to ground myself, trying to remember how to breathe. My chest felt tight, like there wasn't enough air anywhere. Evan followed me out a moment later. He didn't touch me. He didn't rush me. He just stood there, steady, giving me space to decide who I was going to be next. "They planned this," I said, my voice thin. He nodded without hesitation. "I know." My phone buzzed in my hand. Normally I would have ignored it. But something, instinct, muscle memory from 30 years of watching for danger, made me look down. It was a group message preview. One I didn't recognize at first. Then my stomach dropped. I remembered it instantly. An old group chat created months ago for a family event. I'd never muted it. I'd forgotten it existed. At the top of the preview was my mother's name. "Make sure she feels guilty tonight." My breath stalled. I opened the thread, and it felt like stepping into a dark room, only to realize the lights had been turned off on purpose. The instructions were all there, waiting. Message after message from Evelyn to Chloe. What tone to use. When to laugh. When to look overwhelmed. Which stories would soften the guests. How to steer the conversation without making it obvious. There were notes about framing the cottage as a community family asset. Carefully chosen wording designed to manipulate the Hales' generosity. And then I saw it, the sentence that cut the deepest. "Lucy won't refuse in public. She never does." Each message was a knife. Worse, they were accurate. Or they had been. More messages followed, revealing the full scope of it. The timing of the announcement. Who to target emotionally. How to make me look selfish if I resisted. Backup plans if I pushed back. And Chloe's responses. Heart emojis, laughing emojis, enthusiastic agreement. Like my humiliation was a game. A performance they were excited to put on. Evan exhaled slowly beside me as he read over my shoulder. So this wasn't thoughtless, he said quietly. It was deliberate. My throat tightened. They think I'm still that girl. He looked at me then, really looked. His eyes sharp with quiet fire. Then show them you're not. We stood there in silence, the weight settling over me. Not as chains this time but as clarity. None of it was accidental. They'd built a script and expected me to follow it. But something had shifted the moment I saw Chloe smirk. They wrote an entire script. Every tear, every guilt trip, every manipulation. Documented. And they accidentally left me in the group chat. If you want to see what I did next, smash that subscribe button because the confrontation is epic. I walked back into that ballroom with something more powerful than anger. I walked in with proof. And I was about to burn their entire plan to the ground. When I walked back into that room, I wasn't the same person who left. They were about to learn that the manageable daughter was done managing their lies. Evan and I stepped back into the ballroom and I felt it immediately. The shift. Conversations sounded flatter, laughter too loud. Glances sharpened as people sensed something was coming, even if they didn't know what. Evelyn was mid-sentence, riding the high of her announcement. Chloe stood beside her, glowing with practiced gratitude, soaking it in. They didn't see me re-enter. They didn't notice the way my posture had changed, the resolve settling into my shoulders. But Evan did. He squeezed my hand once, not to steady me but to anchor the moment. I returned to my seat with quiet precision. Evelyn finally looked over, irritation flickering across her face before it transformed into something syrupy. "Lucy, honey, are you all right?" She smiled wider. "Your sister is just overwhelmed with gratitude. This is such a beautiful family moment." I set my phone down on the table. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just there. A quiet threat they didn't recognize yet. Chloe leaned forward, eyes glistening on cue. "I mean it, Lucy. This cottage will change everything for me." She clasped her hands together. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Perfect delivery. Straight from the script. Evan didn't wait for a cue. His chair scraped softly as he stood. "Actually," he said evenly, "Lucy and I need to clarify something right now." Evelyn froze mid-smile. "There's nothing to clarify, dear." "There is," Evan replied, voice firm. "A lot, actually." The ripple moved across the table. Guests shifted in their seats. Thomas frowned, already preparing to side with the easiest version of events. I lifted my chin. "Mom, Chloe, the cottage isn't available." Chloe's brows shot up. "What are you talking about?" "You just heard Mom. It's a done deal." "No," I said calmly. "It isn't." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her posture sharpening. "Lucy, don't embarrass yourself, or us. The decision has been made." "By who?" "Yes." "Because it wasn't me." Her lips pinched. "It doesn't need to be you." She gestured around the table. "We're your family. We decide things together." The room leaned in as one. A crack appeared in Evelyn's mask. I reached for my phone, tapped the screen, and slid it slightly toward her. "Before you decided," I said, "you might have wanted to check the terms of the trust agreement the Hales placed the cottage under." Mrs. Hale's eyebrows lifted. Mr. Hale folded his napkin with deliberate care, his gaze settling coolly on my mother. "The property can't be cohabited, lent, or assigned," I continued, "to any non-spousal individual." I met Evelyn's stare. "It's protected as a foundational asset for our marriage. Violating that clause would trigger reversion." Evelyn blinked once. Her smile slid off her face. "You're making this up." I read the agreement. Every word. Murmurs fluttered. Thomas bristled. "Why such a ridiculous restriction?" Mr. Hale cut him off. "To ensure our gift wasn't misappropriated." Chloe inhaled sharply, summoning her final performance. "I can't believe you'd do this." In front of everyone. Her voice cracked. You're humiliating me. I looked at her steadily. You humiliated yourself. Silence. The moment you agreed to follow Mom's plan. Chloe's expression faltered. Evelyn's head snapped toward me. What plan? I tapped my phone again. Here we go. I opened the group messages and began to read aloud. Make sure she feels guilty tonight. A breath sucked in somewhere. Cry if you need to. People should see you as vulnerable. No one moved. She won't refuse in public. She never does. The room froze. Frame the cottage as a family asset. She'll fold if others agree. Each sentence landed like a stone. Chloe's tears dried instantly. Color drained from her face. Lucy, stop, she whispered. This is out of context. I tilted my head. Do you want me to read the rest? She had no answer. The look on my mother's face when I read those messages out loud. Priceless. If you're loving this, hit that like button and keep watching, we're not done yet. And then my mother made one last desperate attempt to take control. My mother's mask was cracking. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to help her put it back together. Evelyn lunged for whatever dignity she could still grasp. This is absurd, she snapped. You invaded our private messages. I met her gaze evenly. You sent them to me. You didn't remove me from the thread. A few guests choked back shocked laughs before quickly looking away. Evelyn's eyes darted around the table, searching for an ally. She found none. The room had shifted and she felt it. Her voice sharpened, cycling through tactics like cards in a losing hand. This is a family matter. We can discuss this privately. You're making a scene. Each attempt fell flat. She stayed calm, unmoved. For once, I wasn't managing her emotions for her. Mr. Hale stood slowly, deliberately, the scrape of his chair echoing in the quiet. Evelyn, he said, his tone measured. This was deceitful. He looked directly at her. You manipulated our gift. And you attempted to coerce your daughter into surrendering something that was never yours. Evelyn's voice cracked. I was trying to help Chloe. She needs stability. Mrs. Hale spoke then, gentle but firm. So does Lucy. She held my gaze with kindness. And she doesn't exploit people to get it. The disappointment in their voices settled heavily over the table. Others nodded. No one disagreed. That was when Evelyn's composure shattered completely. Her voice rose, trembling with rage. Is this what you want? She pointed at me. To make your own mother look like a villain. On the eve of your wedding. I met her eyes without flinching. I didn't make you look like anything, I said quietly. I just stopped protecting the image you wanted everyone to believe. Something broke in her. Her breath came faster, hands shaking. You're ungrateful, she spat. After everything I've done for you. I gave you life. Her voice cracked. And this is how you repay me. By siding with strangers. The manipulation lay bare now. No polish, no warmth, just desperation. I answered steadily, my voice cutting clean through the noise. Strangers didn't teach me that love is a transaction, I said. You did. Evelyn recoiled as if I'd struck her. Her face went white, then flushed red. Her mouth opened, then closed. There was no script for this moment. No way to spin it. Chloe whispered, her voice small and cracked. So the cottage, it's gone. Evan answered without hesitation. It was never yours. He met her gaze evenly. And it never will be. The finality of it settled, heavy and absolute. The room fell silent. Not heavy but decisive. Like a verdict had been delivered. One by one, guests began to stand. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just with quiet resolve. They gathered coats and purses, murmured goodbyes to the Hales, and avoided Evelyn's eyes. A few paused to squeeze my shoulder, offering silent support before leaving. As they filed out, the truth settled around Evelyn and Chloe like dust after a collapse. This wasn't just confrontation. It was exposure. Under the chandelier lights, Evelyn's attempt at power flickered out. She sank into her chair, unable to meet my eyes, unable to rebuild the illusion she'd spent decades constructing. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to comfort my mother. I didn't absorb the blame. I didn't manage the emotions flooding the room. I didn't apologize for existing. I simply stood, Evan beside me, and walked toward the exit with clear purpose. Not running. Not fleeing. Leaving with my dignity intact. Behind us, Evelyn's world cracked open, built on control, guilt, and entitlement, finally exposed for what it was. Chloe cried then, real tears this time. Thomas sat silent, staring into his drink. Evelyn remained alone with the wreckage of her own making. I didn't look back. Not even once. If you think that was satisfying, wait until you hear what happened next. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the aftermath is just as powerful. But the real freedom, that came the next morning when I made a decision that changed everything. Revenge is loud, but freedom is quiet, deliberate, and permanent. The house was unnaturally still the next morning, the kind of quiet that comes after a long storm finally moves on. It felt like the walls themselves had been given permission to rest. Soft strips of sunlight slipped through the blinds, warming the floor. I stood barefoot in the living room, holding a mug Evan had made for me. The coffee tasted different. Real. By 10 the locksmith arrived. I watched the old keys drop into my palm. Small metal pieces that had once meant family. Now they were just artifacts of a past I didn't owe. When he handed me the new set, something inside me settled. A door hadn't just been changed. Cycle had. After the locksmith left, I sat down and opened my phone. I blocked my mother's number. Then my father's. Then Chloe's. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. With certainty. It felt like crossing off an account that had been overdrawn for years. Each block was a small act of protection. My protection this time. I forwarded the messages to the Hales attorney, adding a brief summary. Exactly as they'd asked. Not out of revenge. Out of responsibility. Out of care for the future I was building. Evan found me standing in the doorway, the morning light warming my shoulders. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. I took a breath, steady, clean. Like the house finally belongs to us. He wrapped an arm around my waist, and we stood there together, looking forward. Not at the future my family tried to take from me, but at the one we were choosing. The one we were building together. 6 months later, I was rolling fresh paint onto the cottage walls, laughing as Evan debated colors like it was a life or death decision. We were making it ours. That's when I realized something deeper. It wasn't the cottage that changed my life. It was choosing who I allowed to cross the threshold. I wasn't just building walls. I was building boundaries. The Hales came by that evening with dinner, filling the rooms with warmth and laughter. Real family. Chosen family. What once symbolized loss now held possibility. Standing in that finished cottage, I finally understood something I wish I'd learned sooner. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. Family isn't defined by who shares your blood. It's defined by who respects your boundaries. For a long time, I believed walking away would make me disloyal, ungrateful, cruel. I was wrong. Walking away wasn't betrayal, it was survival. Choosing myself didn't break my family. It simply revealed the truth about it. For years I thought I was the problem. Too sensitive. Too rigid. Too much. What I finally understood was this. I wasn't the problem. I was the solution, holding everything together at my own expense. The strong one isn't the person who endures endlessly. It's the one who finally says, enough. The cottage became a symbol, not of what they tried to take from me, but of what I refused to lose. Myself. To anyone carrying the weight of being the responsible child. To anyone whose no is ignored, minimized, or punished. To anyone told they're selfish for having boundaries. Hear this clearly. You are not ungrateful for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for demanding respect. You are not wrong for choosing peace over toxicity. The people who truly love you will not make you earn that love by losing yourself. They won't weaponize guilt. They won't script your humiliation. And they will never see your happiness as something to steal. Evan and I are still in the cottage, building the life we dreamed of.